I remember this moment with my son like it was yesterday. And it was a moment that I realized I was parenting from fear, but it was masking itself as love. And so we were on a daddy and son trip. We were in Arizona, and I'll never forget this. We got to the hotel. It's probably 5 or 6 years old at the time. So we get to the hotel. I take him out the booster seat, and we're in this hotel parking lot. And the moment I turned my head for a split second, I don't know what came over this little boy, but he started to like dash across the parking lot. And, were cars coming in the moment? No. But I got extremely scared. And I'm like, Caleb! And I go chase after him. And I am heated, right? Now, he's 14 right now. So, you could do the math on that. It's about 8 years old or so. No, I'm lying. He was 6, so that means it's about 8 years ago or so. And so I grab him, I check into the hotel, I go to our room, and that was like one of the last times I actually spanked him. And like open hand on his butt, I'm spanking him, and he's crying. It's just a terrible moment. That's our first day on daddy and son vacation, right? It's like this would happen. And so I remember thinking to myself after that moment, I'm spanking him out of love, right? Like it's out of love is why I'm doing this. I don't want him to get hurt, so I'm doing this out of love. And then I had to realize like that was not out of love. That was out of fear. I'm not saying it's the worst thing to be afraid of, your kid getting hit in the parking lot, but you know, that spanking was not so much about love as it was about fear. That was like reactive parenting. And so that's kind of what I want to talk about in today's talk is ways that, you know, we get angry as fathers, as parents, and reactive, but why it's easy for us to mask it as love, right? It's really fear-based parenting, in my opinion and in my experience, but it's so much easier for us to not label it as fear. And so, just to give you some examples of how fear-based parenting shows up in my home, and I'm sure you could relate to some of these. So I have a 14-year-old and a 4-year-old. My 14-year-old, it shows up more so when he's like, I would say, being dismissive, right? And so if I'm saying something to him that I think is very important and I think it needs to be done now or addressed now, and when his reaction doesn't meet my urgency, right? And or if it's kind of like he's putting it to the side. So that comes up for me. I get angry, like I get this something is boiling inside of me sometimes when that happens. It still happens, but I still realize it and I'm like, "Oh, what is that?" Right? Like that's fear. That's like fear of feeling like this kid doesn't respect me or something like that. You know what I mean? And so it's especially if other people are around. It's fear of me thinking, oh, like my friend, my cousin, my family may see him not react right away how I want him to react. And they might think like, oh, he don't listen to his dad or, like little things like that. My daughter sometimes, this is going to sound like a parenting flex, but I'm not trying to make it a flex. I'm just usually with both my kids actually. With my son, it's getting a little more trickier with him being 14, but usually with both of them, I say something one time, it gets done, right? With my daughter, it gets done. Sometimes, especially I realize with my daughter, if I have to say something like the second time or the third time, I start like feeling this little thing rising up in me. And it's the same thing as I said before. It's, you know, it's easy to label it as anger is because that feels somewhat powerful or something like that, especially as men, but it's not easy to label it as fear. I always say journaling is like an onion, right? And so journaling helps you get to the different layers of the onion. And so on the surface level, it looks like it's anger. And it probably is displaying itself as anger. Like, let's not be unrealistic here. But the root of it, like when I really boil it down, the root of it is some sort of fear that I'm not being listened to. It's some sort of fear as if what I say doesn't matter, right? And then the fear-based parenting comes out and it shows itself as me being very reactive, right? So I just kind of wanted to show you some ways how that can show up in my home, and I'm sure you can relate to both of those stories. And so in Buddhism, there's a concept called metta. And so it, the easy way to look at that is it's love and kindness, right? It's displaying love and kindness and wanting love and kindness for all beings. And when I relate that to being a father, I look at it like, okay, we got to go another level, right? So yeah, we display love and kindness, but it has to be deliberate, right? And so for me, I take the Buddhist teaching of metta, love and kindness, and I apply it to parenting by being like, okay, what kind of love and kindness am I showing deliberately versus what kind of love and kindness am I showing based off of condition, right? Based off of, I need you to listen to me. I love you so much and I want the best for you. So I need you to listen to me for a specific outcome. And that specific outcome is to make me feel validated in my role as a dad. If you are listening to me, it makes me feel like I'm doing a good job in my role. And I think that's what we tend to not want to look at. Now, clearly, like, hasn't been the way I've been thinking for my entire 14 years of parenting, right? This takes time, and it takes a level of humility as a father. It takes a level of humility to sit back and say, in this moment, am I displaying this because it will make me look good in my role, right? Or am I displaying it because I genuinely without wanting anything in return, I genuinely want to act this way because of the benefit of this individual and not because of how it will validate the great job I'm doing as a father, right? And so that's the next step for Metta is, for me, is being very deliberate in how you're expressing this love and why you're expressing this love, right? And so let's talk about different ways that fear shows up as far as just practical ways, right? Some of the reasons why you may be parenting out of fear. And so a very simple one for fathers is like you are fearing that you're losing control, right? Your sense of control is like slipping away in real time. And that's what it feels like. It's like, I don't got this under control, right? Like usually you're the captain of the ship and now something has occurred in real time. I call it live action parenting, right? Something has occurred in live action parenting and you inside of you feel the the tightness, you feel the control just like slipping away. And whenever things are slipping away, the tighter we hold, usually the worse the outcome, right? And so in these moments, you're not realizing it, but you're gripping so tight to this control. Now things are escalating. Now things are being blown up. The smallest thing is triggering you to maximum levels, right? And so that's something to think about, is this sense of wanting to not lose control as the big bad wolf, right? And so that's a way that fear shows up. Another way that fear shows up for fathers in parenting, this way a lot of men won't initially go here, but if they think about it, I assure you it's probably top three things that you fear. And that is the fear of parenting how your father parented you, right? That is one that is big and something that I don't like to, I bring it up a lot, but I don't tend to harp on it too much, only because we have to have like empathy for our parents and our fathers, right? And so the goal is not to realize like, oh man, I'm screaming like my dad did. I didn't do this like my dad didn't do this. But the point is not to stay there forever. The point is to acknowledge it, have some empathy. We talk about metta, right? Love and kindness. Have some empathy for your parents, and then just fix it, and then find ways to be different. But don't harp on it forever and, blame your parents for how you're acting in 20 years of parenting. At some point, your self-awareness will continue to grow, and you will spot it, whether that be through videos like this, whether that be through therapy or something like that. You'll realize like, oh man, I'm doing this like he did. But now have empathy for him, and now what? And so that's another way that fear shows up a lot for me sometimes, for sure. It's like this feeling of like, ugh, doing this like my dad did. Right? And so I just wanted to point that out because I think that's very big. I talked about this earlier, but fear-driven love. I'm going to talk about the difference between like fear-driven love and meta kind of love in parenting. And you can also apply this to dynamics outside of parenting as well. But we talked about this. Fear-driven love is really based on outcomes. It's really conditional, right? 1,000% conditional. And versus meta kind of love in parenting is like, all right, like I don't care if you say something back to me that will make me feel good about myself as a father. I genuinely want to express this type of love to you. And I don't need you to do anything to validate me. That is the difference between fear driven love versus this very deliberate, unconditioned meta kind of love, right? And this comes up for me more so with my son, obviously, because he's 14 and now a lot of emotions that weren't there, a lot of autonomy that weren't there before, he's getting older. So it's very much showing itself. And so he's an athlete, right? And so I have to tell myself, like, listen, when I pay for one-on-one training, when we do all of these things that are going to benefit him and his journey as an athlete, I am doing that not because it's going to make me look good as a father. Oh, I put so much sacrifice. I put so much time in. I did all of this. Like the ego loves that type of stuff, right? It sounds really good to hear that type of stuff, but that's not what's important. What's important is I am doing this wanting nothing in return. And sometimes, like all of these things I talk about, get it. I want you to know this is an ongoing journey for me, right? Just because I get on this camera and talk about things that I've experienced and things that I feel like can help, don't for 1 second think that I don't experience any of these and I'm on a level here and anybody who I'm talking to is on a level here, especially if you resonate with the things I'm saying. I think the big difference is, right, while I still go through these things, the reaction time, the awareness time for me, I feel like has drastically decreased, or you would say increased, however you want to put it, right? Like, so meaning I can snap, but I quickly realize, much quicker than I did before, I quickly realize like, oh, that was because of that. Let me reel it back in, right? And the difference between snapping at your kid, not knowing why, and then feeling all of this guilt and shame and apology and repeat the cycle. And sometimes you're not apologizing until day 2 after this thing has happened or hours after this thing has happened, right? And so I've grown from that. The actions are still happening in my life, but my awareness of them and my ability to kind of center myself has sped up drastically. And that's the only difference for me. And so I'm aware that if you're listening to this, you're probably in the same boat, or maybe you're in the same boat, but your reaction time, you relate to that longer reaction time of like, oh, that wasn't the best way to go about that. Maybe you think about that a day or two later or hours later. Whereas usually, because I spend so much time trying to be intentional and just parenting from this place that I can't really explain, right? I'm able to catch this stuff much quicker. And that's what will happen with you, right? If you take the time to do things like journaling, you take the time to sit in silence and reflect, you take the time to pause during live action parenting moments. Just give yourself a second. I talk about this in another video about the idea that freedom lives right in between your reaction, right? So there's that in between moment, and then there's your reaction. So freedom is going to live like right in the middle of that, right? Because you do have the choice to choose how you react. Usually we don't realize that, and some automatic triggering subconscious reaction happens. But once you realize, like, aha, I see what's going on here, and I'm in the middle. That's where freedom lives, right? And so anybody can practice this. I don't like to use the word master because something will always like teach you a new lesson, but anyone can practice this and embody this. Let's use embody. Anybody can embody this way of parenting. I've realized how much more attuned I am with this type of stuff than I was a few years ago. And so the ways that it's going to show up for you once you start journaling, asking yourself questions. Oh man, why did I react this way? Speak to yourself on that. Write that down. Sit in silence and reflect. Why did I react this way? Think to yourself, like, what am I afraid of? In this reaction, what could I possibly have been afraid of? So just like talk to yourself, reflect, write it down, sit in silence, contemplate. And the more you do that, the more you'll be able to, like, in real time, the more you'll be able to, as a father, just like catch things, right? The way in my mind, as I'm explaining this, I think of it like if you watch baseball, you're in the outfield, pop flies are being hit to you, and you just snagging them. Like with your eyes closed, you just snagging them out the air, right? Because you're now able to, you're aware of them, right? You're now able to be like, he just said this thing that completely pissed me off. But luckily for me, I can see where this is going, and I'm gonna just catch it before it happens, right? Or if I drop it, now what? I didn't catch this one, I dropped it, aka I overreacted and I was very angry. Now what am I gonna do? How am I gonna not only treat my child, but most importantly, how am I gonna treat myself after dropping it? Am I gonna show metta to myself and show some compassion for myself, or am I gonna, like, be so upset with myself after this? Because you got to understand that for me, I realize that my children are modeling me, right? I realize that they're looking at how I act in certain situations. And especially my son, like, he is going to 100% be like me, right? And so I have to be very cognizant of that. And I have to think to myself, like, all right, man, like, he's looking at how am I going to react in this moment, even if it's something outside of him, just life in general, right? When life pushes me down, he's going to look like, how is he going to react? Is he going to react out of fear, or is he going to stand up and approach it out of love? And so, yeah, that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. And, if this resonated with you, I would highly recommend you downloading my free shadow work guide for dads. It's in the description. This video, there's a lot of prompts in there that will help bring up this type of stuff. Also, my 365 Dad Journal as well. Those are two resources that will really help you be more attuned with how you may be parenting out of fear and trying to mask it as love. And so, yeah, just wanted to talk about that today, and I'll catch y'all next week.